Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show will revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Moosie Drier and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen, along with Moosie Drier, and today we are thrilled to welcome a legendary comedian and impressionist. He's appeared on such iconic shows as Ed Sullivan, The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and David Letterman.
Knocking him dead at the Copa.
That's good. Would you welcome John Byner?
Truly a great entertainer. He is a legendary impressionist. He's been entertaining audiences for 40 years. Ladies and gentlemen, here's John Byner. John!
He's hosted his own shows such as Something Else, The John Byner Show, and Bizarre. He's appeared in such films as What's Up, Doc?, The Black Cauldron, Stroke a Race, and Transylvania 65000. He's the author of the memoir 5 Minutes, Mr. Byner, A Lifetime of Laughter, and he's also a fellow New Yorker. Please help us welcome John Byner. John, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
The legend.
Yes.
John
Well, we have a lot
Byner.
to cover, but I want to start by going back with you. So I was reading your book. So you grew up in New York, and
Yeah.
you started doing impressions very young. So
Yeah.
how did that all start coming about?
Well, I was 6 years old, as I recall, and my mom had me out of school to take me for checking my eyes, and on the way back, she saw that there was a movie playing in the local theater in Laurelton, Long Island, and it was a Bing Crosby movie, and it was called, I was told later by someone who looked it up, Here Come the Waves, Bing Crosby and the Andrews Sisters, I believe, and after we got through with watching that movie, we got home, and Dad was coming home from work, and Mom was was cooking his meal, and he said, "Christina, what did you see at the movie today with John?" And she said, "Let John tell you." So I started doing Bing Crosby, doing accentuate the positive. You gotta accentuate. Didn't even know what the words meant, but there I went, and they went, "What?" And then I was awakened sometimes to come down and show Aunt Annie what I could do, or and it started there.
Incredible. So also, so who you're such an inspiration to so many other comedians that I've read. So who were some of your inspirations growing up?
Wow, my inspiration. I guess my father died when this is a long story, but it's not. I'll cut it short. We were living in Queens and Elmhurst at the time. We moved around a lot when I was a kid. I was feeling bad about my father's passing naturally, and now I'm about 11 years old. And my friend said, "Hey, we didn't have a television there," and friend said, "Hey, come on over to the house and watch something on our television Sunday night." It was Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, and I started laughing at Jerry Lewis, and I didn't care why,
Mhm.
and I didn't care where I was. I just felt so, the whole thing went out of me, and I was laughing at this guy. And he was my inspiration.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And I later worked with him. He had a show because these things happen. I worked with Bing Crosby, and they were my favorite people. My parents and Bob Hope and all these people that I used to listen to on the radio and watch on television, and I have to pinch myself. It's just
Yeah, it's
amazing.
amazing to get to be fans of someone and then work with them later. Incredible.
Absolutely, and I was a fan of everybody.
That's fantastic.
Category.
So one of your first, I think your first big break I read was you won a JFK impersonation contest,
Right.
and that got you your first agent. What?
That my manager, my personal manager, Harry Colombi, we were together 22 years. And
Wow.
what happened was I did the impression of JFK. I came in from Long Island at the time, and came into the city, and a guy would collect a buck at the door just to pay for he had a thing about the comedians and this and that. So there was a big crowd there of agents and people. I didn't know they were there. I just figured they were people. I didn't know from agents and managers. And I did my thing, and I got the $10 prize, $10, and paid for car fare. And
Yeah.
Afterwards, I'm being handed these cards from people. I was, agents and managers and this and that and the other thing. And this one fellow, Harry Columbia, came up to me and says, he's had this kind of a thing about talking like this. And he says, I like, you gotta, I did it. I got a little bit ahead of myself. Now after I win this thing, they're going to do improvs. I didn't know what an improv was. I thought, improv, what is that? So I'm sitting in the chair out there, a fold out chair with the rest of all these people. And one of the comics comes by, he says, hey, you want to do an improv with me? And I said, he says, that, you make this thing up. And he goes, so now we're up on the stage, and he's told me he's going to be the plane that the landing gear can't come down, and I'm tower, and I'm giving him instructions about landing. And he doesn't know about the landing gear. So here now we're on the stage, and he goes, plane the tower, request permission to come in. And I'm standing in there. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say to the guy, and it's just another time. He just, plane the tower, request permission to land. And I still don't, and I've got to say, I'll say, man, for the third time, if I don't say something, this is going to go flat. So I got this idea, and I said, after the third one, I said, boy, have I got news for you, like Rod. and the place went nuts. And then now I'm down on the street with these people handing me cards, and Harry comes up and he says, yeah, but let's have a cup of coffee. And that's how it started with Harry Columbia. And he managed Thelonious Monk and Mose Allison, jazz people. And he was able to get me into all those little jazz clubs in Greenwich Village and stuff like that, because they trusted what Harry would bring to them. And that's how it all started.
I love it. What's funny is the people at the time, they may have taken the silence of your two non-answers to the permission to land as part of your bit, because that's the funny part, like the sleepy, controller guy. But and then I imagine, like, once you got the laughs, when you said, "Boy, do I have a story for you," or whatever you said.
Yeah.
That was when the bug must have bit you right then. When you get the laughter, when you get that response from your audience. I mean,
I had been working in a club on Long Island to make some money at the end of the weekend. At the end of Saturday and Saturday night, every night. And I was needing some money, and I was driving a truck at the time for a pool company, welding swimming pool company, and we traveled all around the upstate and New Jersey and different places. And I passed this sign, and it would say entertainment every Saturday night. And this big house, and the front porch had been turned into a bar and a little restaurant and a whole thing in there. And I heard that, and my wife said, the kids need shoes. So I put my suit on, and I drove over there. And as I was walking in this place, I heard this from a comic who was getting off the stage. One person, it's probably his agent.
Yeah.
And so I said to the boss who was standing there, he's kind of a Rodney Dangerfield kind of guy with jingling change in his pocket. And I said, are you? Yeah. He says, yeah, I run the place, So I said, you mind if I get up there and do something? And he says, hey, it couldn't hurt, And so I went and talked to the trio that was there, and we worked something out, and I was hired to come every Saturday night with money under the table.
Right.
And I helped pay for the shoes.
Yeah. I love that.
Now, one of the musician, we were allowed to hang out in the kitchen between shows on Saturday, and he's reading the newspaper. He said, hey, there's a JFK contest in Manhattan. You ought to go do it. And that's it.
Right. And so when you were in the Village, that's when you got another break, and you got into Ed Sullivan.
Yeah, I was working at the Vanguard, and a guy comes in one night, and the show's all messing. He's still standing there, and he says, "Hey, I like what you do, and how about coming over there and doing your thing during dress rehearsal? And if the old man likes you, maybe we'll give you a shot up the road." Ed Sullivan. And I said, "Oh, sure, right." So
Yeah.
this was a Thursday, and I had to show up Sunday. So I drive my 1950 Plymouth into, park around the corner, which is probably unusually usually hard to do now, but I walk back there, and I'm there with Harry up in the dressing room, and now it's time to go down there and see what I can do. And I did the Ed Sullivan thing, and the Mathis and the things I did, and I go back up, and I'm putting my stuff back in the little suitcase I had with me, and bop bop bop, and it's Jack Babb, the guy that came down to the club, and he says, "You go on tonight."
Hmm.
What? What?
Wow. So come on down to dress rehearsal. Was there sort of way of having a disguised audition, which you may have
Well,
been?
that's what the idea was, to show Ed Sullivan what I could do, and
Yeah.
maybe up the road, if somebody fell out or
Right.
something, they'd give me a
Yeah.
break. And
So,
that's the way it all started.
so
That's
what was Sullivan like? And how nervous were you? I mean, because there's all these like stories that Sullivan had no sense of humor, but that's different than what your experience was.
Oh, he was he has like one of the guy's sense of humor.
mhm.
He invited me out to work with some other people out there in Lake Tahoe at
Mhm.
Harris Club, and he was there. He was booked in there for 2 weeks, and there were different acts with me, and Marilyn Michaels, a comedian lady,
Mhm.
she's very good, and she was there, and several others, and I was down the dressing room, unbeknownst to me. You weren't supposed to whistle in the dressing room. It's like, forget about it. They throw you out on the street. I didn't know that, so I got there early, and I'm in the dressing room. Doors open, and Ed Sullivan's door is open, and I don't hear anybody talking, so I think it's probably the help in there cleaning up, and so I'm in there, and I'm shining my shoes, and I start whistling, and I hear, "Who's that whistling over there?" No, I said, and I hear Jack Babb say, "It's Byner, Ed." And there's nothing for a little while, and then I say, "Byner, one more peep out of you, I'll come over there and string you up by your red balls."
So after you make your first appearance on Sullivan, does your life change like instantly? Does it happen like overnight for you?
No, you had to get back to the job. You couldn't. I wasn't making a living doing it. I just did the show, and then I went back in. I do my day job, and then I drive into Manhattan and work the clubs that I was able to get into in the Village. Different kinds of music came as I was doing that. Different kinds of stuff went
Yeah.
on.
So you were on Sullivan during the infamous Jackie Mason
I was right there.
controversial
I was
episode.
right.
Now I know what happens. I'm sure Jonathan does too. Why
Yeah.
don't you share?
Okay. uh, it was a time when President Johnson was going to speak during the time that the Sullivan Show was aired and live, as you know, and so Sullivan had a cut time of people, and during the first half of the show, and then he could continue later on the second half of the show. So Jackie Mason is out there near the end of the first half, and he's talking about this. He's not doing too well with the kids. The kids are in the audience to hear a rock and roll group, and he's not having any luck. He's out there. He says, "Look at this! I give you 30 jokes. Pick one you like." He's saying things like that. So so then word gets to Ed Sullivan that the president has stopped speaking now. he tells the stage manager to give him the 1 minute sign. So the stage manager's got the earmuffs, and he comes around, and he goes like this. He goes like this to Jackie, and Jackie says, "Look at this." First of all, let me say he was getting some laughter because he was talking about Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Boynton. You don't hear me talking about her, saying things like that. So he gets the 1 minute sign, and he goes, "Look at this. I'm getting hot, and they're giving me the finger. Well, here's a finger for you, and a finger for you, and a finger for you." And luckily, the finger was off on the other, out of the frame that he gave to Ed Sullivan.
Oh,
Wow.
So I'd go up the stairs after I was, or coming down the stairs after packing up and getting my stuff ready, and I used to come down there, and his drawer would be open, and they'd be taking the makeup off his face and the big chair and all that kind of stuff. Good night, Ed. All right, there, Byner. You're not pretty. And so this night, after Jackie's gone, the door is closed, and I hear, "You lousy son of, you did all these," and I'm not going to tell him what's on the television. Tell you guys about it. But he went into like several words I heard in the service. Let's put it that way. And every once in a while you hit it, "Butthead, don't give me Butthead." Well, he's not going to work, and he didn't work again on the show for 10 years.
Wow.
And Ed Sullivan is a forgiving soul, and he ran into Jackie down in Miami. And in the elevator, of all things, Jackie gets on the elevator and says, "When are you going to do our show again?" And that was the end of that. That's what he came back after that. So that's that story.
Yeah, that's a lucky happenstance for
Yes.
Mr. Mason.
Absolutely.
Were you on any of the episodes at the on Sullivan when the Beatles came on?
No, I had, unfortunately, I had not. No, animals, and others, but they're not the Beatles. No, big fan, absolutely.
I want to ask you, you've done so many great impressions, and I mean, just listening to you now, it's uncanny. So like Martin Lewis, John Wayne. Was there anyone who took offense to any of your impressions that, confronted you, like, "Hey, why are you doing that?"
George Jessel.
Really? Okay.
Those of you who may remember, that was my favorite part. That was my I couldn't do a Carson show without doing a Jessel. He'd always do Jessel. And so George Jessel. I was on a show for the Kraft Music Hall, and we were pretending to be the Johnny Carson show, and Richard, what was his name? Anyway, there was an impressionist who was doing Johnny Carson at the desk, and there was a woman that was sitting next to me, an actress, and I was doing Jessel, and I was talking about my niece Heather, and he always had these young women around him. I guess he just paid them to hang out with him or something. But I was saying about my niece Heather and my other one, and all these Irish names of his nieces, and I get word from my agent about 2 weeks later, and he's saying, Jessel is suing you.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Jessel's, So I said, well, what do I do about that? He said, "Don't worry about it. When he's not working, he sues everybody."
That's funny. Was it? Well, you said Rich. Was it Rich Little by chance?
Rich Little, yeah.
Which is funny because Little, like many of you guys, he also did a Carson, a very good Carson, but he actually pissed Johnny off at one point and didn't come back on the show. Johnny didn't have him on the show for years because of an impersonation or something that happened that Johnny didn't like. So I'm glad he didn't do glad he didn't impersonate Carson.
I never did. He was kind of a sensitive guy. I don't know what it was he said.
He seemed like such a personal guy, such a private man.
Sometimes people would over the years, I noticed that people would feed him a line, but he never asked them what it meant.
Right.
And he'd say it anyway, and that wasn't a good thing.
So, John, moments ago you were doing your Jackie Mason, right? And that leads me to this. So, you had famously had this your own animated show called The Ant and the Aardvark.
Yeah.
One of the characters, the Aardvark, was based off of. I mean, you did Jackie Mason's voice for that, basically. I got to tell you, I'm not kidding you. It wasn't for years until I realized that it wasn't Jackie Mason. And I know you. I know who you are. We're going to talk about our show that we did together, but I'm well cognizant of John Byner.
Yeah.
But that's how good you are, man. Like, I had no idea that wasn't Jackie Mason.
I had I read someplace or something about 10 years ago where somebody gave me credit for doing voices without leaving my imprint, is what he put it. You couldn't tell under that it was me.
Flip a coin or something. Okay, we don't have a coin, so we'll flip you. What do you want, heads or tails?
When you do all the voices on the show, just how difficult is it to transition from character to character so quickly?
You just have it in your head. You have it's like my mind's ear sort of thing. You have, like I did Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis on a David Letterman thing, and they were talking to each other, So anyway, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? You never want to do anything. It's just just back and forth.
Yeah, and so you just mentioned Letterman too, because I watched that clip where you came back as a guest, and it was in the Ed Sullivan Theater. So what was that experience like to just go back to that stage again and perform after so many years away?
I had the same damn dressing room.
Really?
It was amazing. It said nothing had changed, nothing at all. It was.
That's
just,
remarkable because I remember when Letterman got the CBS gig and they refurbished the Ed Sullivan Theater. It looked so brand new, shiny, and new. And I, from where I sit, 3,000 miles away, I assumed that it was nothing like that. But it was nothing like it used to.
The magic show business. Well, you live in the backstage and you come out and do your job, and you live in the backstage, and the backstage is never as pretty as the front.
Yeah. They put all that money into what was only going to be seen on camera. I see. I love it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So did Steve Allen come to see you personally, speaking of late night shows?
I was in this club with Woody Herman and Mel Torme, and Mel was a sweet guy. I loved him. He was wonderful. And so was Woody. Nice. But I'm working my show, and between just opening, like after Woody played a few tunes with the band, and then I'd be introduced, and then Mel would come out. Okay, so I'm out there and I'm doing my thing, and I hear the familiar Steve Allen in the back of the room. And I said, "Oh my God, that's Steve Allen in back there. Holy cow." So I did my thing, and I left and went downstairs to my dressing room. And I get a call, and it's, "Hey, Johnny, come on up here." Mel. "Somebody wants to see you in my dressing room." So I said, "Okay." So I go up there, and it's Steve, and I go in, and he was writing on this thing. He says, "I really like your stuff, and when I get another show, you're on it." And I thought, you hear a lot about that stuff,
Yeah.
Right. Yes, you're Uncle Charlie. Yeah. And sure enough, I went out to Vegas with Mel Torme, and took a plane every night from Vegas to LA to rehearse with Steve Allen and the rest of the people. Yeah, he was true to his word.
Legend.
That's great. So I want to
hit a fan of mine, which I'm proud to say.
Well, I want to hit some of your roles in shows. One of your very first one was when you had a recurring role in the Jerry Van Dyke sitcom, Accidental Family.
Wow, that was my first.
Yeah, you can still see episodes on YouTube on that one. So the reviews were good, and Jerry Van Dyke complained because they gave it a Friday night slot. So what are some of your memories on that show? And how does it feel to be like a semi-regular on a TV show finally?
Yeah, it was terrific. It was a very wonderful thing to be part of, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And I I found out later that it was without an audience, right? So then I go do a pilot with Eve Arden, and I play a, a guy that comes around and picks up dogs. And I, with in a uniform, and I come walking in, and the audience goes, "Hey!" And like a jerk, I take a bow before I do my lines. And they say, "Cut, everybody, cut!" And
Oh,
it's okay, Byner. Let's try that again, but don't nobody knows the audience is out there.
Right.
So I learned the hard way. It was pretty embarrassing.
Yeah.
it's
Well,
the mothers-in-law?
I've forgotten the name of it.
Okay.
I did so many pilots for people.
well, speaking of
A
this,
segue.
speaking of thank you. You tossed that up like an underhand softball. You and I did a ABC pilot, and before we even just bring it up and talk about it, I just want you to know, I was one of those kids that, for better or for worse, didn't have to go to sleep by a certain time, and I was a Carson fan. So when I came on when I did that sitcom with you, I was a fan. I remember going, oh, John Byner. So we did here. I'm going to pull up a photo, see if this brings anything back. There's you.
Oh yeah, and the gang.
And there's me. Look how cool I think I am right there in the black leather jacket.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
This was an ABC pilot. It was called
Beautiful
Sheehy.
boy.
That's you.
Yeah.
And we were part of this gang of called the Supreme Machine.
Yeah.
I'm shocked it didn't get picked up. And we were these Brooklyn kids without parental guidance. You were so funny, and my character was Evil Konopchik was his name. He was this daredevil Polish kid.
I remember doing these things, pulling myself up to show you guys I could do it. And
yes.
There was one big guy, one kid that was, like from New York, when he was like this guy.
This guy right here, his name's John Cassisi. He was the heavy in a film called Bugsy Malone with
right.
Jodie Foster.
Yeah.
And other than this photo, I find no trace of it. So when you did the pull-ups, it just brought back something I could have died never remembering that. Thank you for remembering that.
Okay.
Well, yeah, we're kind of jumping a little bit over, but I want to back up a little with you because you also hosted a few variety shows. The first one was Something Else, which had such a unique format, like traveling. Again, several episodes are on YouTube, and I watched the one with Jack Wilde on because it was like a variety show on the beach. It was
wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah. Girls, I'm still in touch with some of them. Yeah.
Oh,
they had the straight parade in San Francisco, and there were 3 guys.
Right. It's 2025.
Yeah.
Let's put that one.
Yeah.
The rest. Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about the John Byner Comedy Hour because it wasn't on very long, but that's where you introduced Bob Einstein's, Super Dave Osborne. So can you talk about Bob a little bit, how you met and how Super Dave came about?
Bob was just a nice guy, and he talked like this.
Yeah.
And John, what you doing? And I always loved the years passed, and we were on the phone. And I'd go out there, and we'd have dinner together with our wives and bling blang bloom. But he was always funny, and he always had funny things to say about people.
Like a Mike Tyson has the voice the way he does. Like
he would talk like this, and if he got excited, he got talk like this.
Big guy.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You're not supposed to do that.
Yes. Yeah.
And I loved him like a brother.
Well, speaking of Super Dave there, because I was younger, so I didn't see the John Byner show when it first came out, but I remember seeing it on your Showtime show, Bizarre. Yeah. It was such a funny show, risque show.
Oh, yeah.
We had such a great cast. So what was the history? How did that come about? And that was intended for Richard Dawson originally?
Yeah, he was on the pilot.
Can't even imagine that.
Blinking and pursing his lips. And I just met him one time he should stop by to see the guys, and I was introduced to him, but I didn't know him too well at all. But
So
hey,
you were in one of the great comedies back then. What's Up, Doc, with Barbara Streisand, Ryan O'Neal.
okay, so I'm invited to take part. I wasn't given a script. They didn't know what I was going to do because they didn't have any lines for me. And Bogdanovich would keep walking by every once in a while. I'd be sitting there in a tuxedo waiting to go on. And I went over the where you got your uniforms when they send you in to get something at the something West, it was called. And you'd go in and you get a tuxedo and you open it up and I saw Bing Crosby. That's right, it was Bing Crosby's tuxedo.
Oh wow!
At one time, yeah. And I did a cowboy thing once. I opened up the leather thing and it was Richard Widmark's jacket. You know, his name was in. So those things happened. Anyway, up until I got that movie, I would hear at the shows I did, television. Okay, that's a wrap. That meant it was over, right? It's a wrap, right?
Yeah.
So I'm on the set 2 weeks with the tuxedo sitting there, and finally they get me thing with the thing under the table and that kind of thing.
Great scene.
And I hear the guy goes, okay, that's a wrap. So I went back to my place in Malibu and I gathered my kids up and we went to Antigua where we had a leased place and right across from Admiral Nelson's boatyard. And a phone rings and it's Harry Colombi, my manager, says, they're waiting for you in San Francisco. How did I know it was a wrap in LA and then they were going to go to San Francisco? Nobody told me.
Wow.
And
That's
that's
not
why.
on you.
And
That's
that's
on
why.
that's on the assistant director. That's not on you. Yeah.
Well, hey, I didn't feel bad about it. I just thought it was a shame.
Yeah.
I had some friends in San Francisco.
Right.
It's still like one of the funniest scenes I remember in any movie, that scene under the table in What's Up, Doc.
But yeah, well, it was fun to do. They raised the table. We first tried it with a regular table. It was impossible. So they raised the table up to be about that high, and that gave the impression that we were down under the table.
Yeah, you mentioned before. We talked about it a little bit. So you had a recurring role, such a groundbreaking show, and so it drew protests from certain groups, but also supposedly made ABC very nervous. And was there talk among the cast? Did you know like how groundbreaking it was at the time while you were doing it?
Not at all. No,
Really?
no. No, I liked doing the character. It was fun.
Oh.
Mandan, I liked Mandan. I worked with him. He carried me around a couple of times.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was good. He was fun. And Jessica was beautiful. Jessica Tate. Yes, she was.
Yeah.
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 And well, speaking of legendary shows that you were on, you also made several appearances on the Carol Burnett show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What was that atmosphere like? Was it difficult to keep a straight face?
You walk in at the rehearsal the first day and it's like you're home. Everybody's nice. There's nobody yelling, nobody's showing off. It's just very nice. It was like, she was like a sister to me. She was really just like a sister. She was funny and friendly and
One of the best sketch shows I can remember.
Yeah, terrific writing. My God. Terrific.
Did people try to crack each other up or no?
Well, that thing with Tim and
Harvey Korman.
He wasn't Harvey Korman. I hear from his son that Harvey didn't care too much for that.
Oh wow!
Oh really? Well, yeah, because he couldn't help it because
he got
when they were doing most anything
rehearsal week, and Tim would do his thing, and it was just it all worked out, but it made Harvey a little upset because he had got his lines down.
Yeah,
There's somebody going like, just laughing like hell, but it was hysterical.
Yeah,
my God, the dentist was forget about it.
Yeah, the famous dentist scene. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
But they crack each other up in many, many sketches.
Yeah.
So, John, were you considered? Did you almost do Mork from Mork and Mindy before?
I'll tell
It
you.
was on Happy Days.
I'll tell you how close I got. Ron Howard and his wife were invited to come over and have dinner with my girlfriend at the time and me. And after, it was nice. And after dinner, Ron Howard said, "Hey, John, you ought to go over to blah, blah, blah and try out for this character." And I said, "Does he make noises and things like that?" He says, "Yes." I said, "I don't want to do it. I don't want to make noises." And that's as close as I got to it. And then they come out with a movie, the making of this, and they show this redheaded guy throwing a script down and saying, "This is crap," and storming off the stage. And I never did it, but they got away with it.
Oh,
And that's as close as I got. Was the living room, my friend, and Ron Howard sitting with his wife at the table.
Writer's embellishment a little bit. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I want to jump ahead because you were in a movie that I loved, The Black Cauldron. It was a Disney film that many said was too dark for Disney. It was the first one that received a PG rating. Tim Burton worked on it. So how was that working on Disney? Because there was a huge changeover in management at the time when you were doing it.
Well, that was the last one that was painted by hand. The rest of it's been done with,
Oh, wow. Okay.
tricks on computers. Yeah, that was the last one that was handmade.
Wow.
Basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were looking for a different kind of voice for this character, Gergie. And they hired me because they had seen me do, or had heard me do that voice when I was doing the Gary Moore thing. And I played a veterinarian, and which was my idea.
Yeah.
And I used to get letters from kids. My dog doesn't chase the ball anymore. Yeah.
And another fun one that you were in was Transylvania 65000 with Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis. So
Yeah.
I bet you improvised all your dialogue with Carol Kane.
Yeah, in the kitchen. When we're in the kitchen and she gets my hand caught and all that kind of stuff, and she says, I say, "Why do you want to come with me? Come on, get out of here." And she goes, "Come back soon, I'll be naked."
Brilliant.
So, yeah, we did that. But a lot of it, Rudy DeLuca was a good friend of mine, and he wrote for my show years back, the John Byner Show. He was one of the writers on it, and we remained friends all these years.
You did Stroker Ace with Burt Reynolds. What do you got for us? Who punched who?
Burt was a fan,
Yeah.
and I of him, and I had worked with Lonnie on some other thing, a big 3 on a Date. It was called 3 on a Date, a big special, and I had worked with Lonnie, and we got along real well, and he knew that, and he was looking for somebody to work the show, and I was his surprise to Lonnie. Truthfully, I was his surprise to Lonnie. Don't tell me how. So she was very thrilled to see me and had fun with me. And
Nice.
And that's how it happened.
Nice.
But the first time they wanted me to sing like Johnny Mathis, I said, "Oh my God, I thought I was going to act in this thing, and I'm doing my act here." "No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We have a plan. We have a plan. We have a plan."
It worked.
Yeah.
You've done so many great things, and it's hard to whittle down. But we do want to talk about that you were on two of the most famous game shows of all time, Hollywood Squares and Match Game. First, let's talk about Hollywood Squares. So we've had on other people who appeared on that, and they said that all week shows were filmed in one day, and at lunch everyone would drink. So Thursday and Friday shows were wild because everyone was drunk. So what were your experiences on that?
Well,
Is it a little like Woodstock? If you remember it, you weren't really there.
It's like as far as I'm concerned, it was all based around Paul Lynde. It was all, he was the center, and he was hysterical, and in life he was hysterical, and I'd known him for years before, and and it was, all that you got a chance to make up your own answer or look to see what the writers may have
Yeah.
put there in case you ran into trouble. And for the most part, I said what I want to say.
Yeah. Good. You did.
Sometimes it wasn't great, but
Yeah.
I did.
You can always tell when someone chose the fallback, insurance line a writer left in case
Yeah.
they didn't come up with anything.
Paul Lynn, why do motorcycle cops wear leather jackets? Because gingham tears easy.
Yeah, and I mean, so many of his answers were that got through network standards. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
they slipped a lot of things in there for
they
sure.
sure did. They
Yeah.
sure did. But I've heard a few mixed things about him. I was such a fan. I never worked with him, so I don't know anything personally. Was he a sweet guy or was it? I don't know. I've heard a few
He
mixed
was a
things.
nice guy. He was
great.
I heard when he got loaded, when he got drunk, he was nasty, but he was never.
Yeah.
I was sharing. They had cubicles set up at the Riviera Hotel. We were doing the show from the Riviera Hotel stage. And I'm next to him in this cubicle, and I smell. I said, hey, over there, Paul, are you smoking pot? And here's what I hear on the other side. I'll show my. They told me I couldn't drink anymore.
Oh man.
I did so many. I really, and this goes back match game. I don't even have what you have to match.
Fill in the blank of a sentence.
Oh.
And dumb Dora was so dumb. How dumb was she? And then and then whatever the question is, and then to be a blank.
I got
and and Richard Dawson was kind of the Paul Lynde of that show, where he was kind of the anchor.
Yeah.
But not so much for the humor, but for he was one of the smarter contestants.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah, I got it now.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was set up or what. I don't remember.
Gene Rayburn. Yeah.
Have you worked with so many legends in the field? I mean, first Man in the Santa Claus suit with Fred Astaire. What was Astaire like?
Once again, the bigger they are, the nicer they are.
Yeah.
He was just a guy. He was just a nice guy. We were sitting off camera. He and I working on lines together, and you could hear in the distance, "Okay, keep one, keep two, keep the different signs, for the guys to edit and all that kind of. Okay, save one, save two. They're saying that clips. You're going to take that first scene, or we're going to do it together. That. So he stops. He says, "Wait a minute. Why don't they just take all of them?" That's a good question.
That's funny.
Take them all. Look at them all again. Yeah.
That's great.
Well,
I kind of agree with you. The bigger they are, the nicer they are. They have less to prove. They're not trying to, compensate for.
Step on their toes, no.
Yeah. Who were you starstruck by? Do you remember?
The kick was to be working with people that my parents loved, because I felt they were there. I felt they were somehow part of it. Working with them,
That's great.
Bing Crosby, Fred Astaire, Bob Hope, Jack Benny. I didn't work with Jack Benny. What are you lying? Yes, you are.
Yeah,
no,
but
my mother caught my show. In fact, my mom is the kind of person, she doesn't want to put anybody through any trouble. So I was so excited about being on the Sullivan Show that very night that in between I called her and I said, "Mom, I'm going to be on the Sullivan Show." And rather than tell her friends, watch the whole show, she says, "Which half?" That's how excited she got about it.
Yeah.
But that was, that was a big thing. But the big times, I just, there are a lot of people I wish I had met, but
sure.
I still can make some of Michael Caine's a favorite person. I've never met him.
Oh yeah.
I want to ask about your memoir, 5 Minutes, Mr. Byner. Such a great memoir. I read it before we we came on today.
Yeah.
And I just, how do you cut anything out? I mean, it was such a great career. How difficult was it to not include everything?
Well, that a lot of things were kind of edited by the publisher of the book, and I had things that didn't relate much, but they were fun things to say, and no, that doesn't mean it, like that, and just about that. But most of it, most of the stuff I really wanted to say, I said, and
Mhm. No,
starting out,
Right.
but it's a great book. I highly recommend. And
Yeah.
the important thing is, how can people follow you on social media?
It's a matter of luck these days.
You have your website. It's John Byner.
Yeah.
JohnByner.com.
That's
Yeah.
the
Hey, talk to you guys.
Hey, Mr. Byner, I got to say, you look great. You
Yeah.
sound great.
Yeah.
You are so quick still. And, all jokes aside, I mean, it warms my heart. I'm a huge fan. And
Thank you. I really appreciate it a lot.
I want to say, when Moosie and I were talking about you coming on, you may not have been in awe of other people, but we felt that way with you when we knew that you were coming on.
we were just, what about when he did this? No, what about when he did that? And we were just like, we're genuinely huge fans of yours, and we're so honored to have you today.
Very much, and if I can help you in the future, just let me know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, John.
Take care.
In the words of Steve Allen, the next show we get, you're on.
All right. Okay.
Again,
All right, my friend.
Thank you. You asked really nice questions. I appreciate it.
All right, he's going to sign us off real quick to make it official. Here we go,
And
John.
by the way, yes, and please thank Annie for us for all the help she gave
Yes,
us.
yes.
Thank you very much.
This has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen, along with Moosie Drier. And again, a very special thanks to John Byner. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thank you for tuning in to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast. Listening to this podcast just makes you really cool.